Welcome to My Irish Radio, music and culture news, your connection to everything happening in the world of Irish music and culture. I'm Jamie Flanagan. Each episode will share the latest news from Ireland's vibrant music scene, from traditional and folk to rebel ballads, pub tunes, Celtic rock, and today's top Irish pop. We'll also bring you updates on festivals, cultural events, and people keeping Irish heritage alive around the world. And remember, My Irish Radio is more than just a station. It's your community, your soundtrack, your voice. You can listen 24/7 at myirishradio.com and through the links in the podcast description below. Here's the best part. You can be part of it. Host your very own show on My Irish Radio. Choose your playlist, share your stories, make My Irish Radio your Irish Radio. Let's get into what's happening this week in Irish music and culture.
I want you to picture a car, and it's moving at, 100 miles an hour. That is the cultural output of Ireland right now. The music, the theater, the art. It is just screaming down the highway. Now, picture the road that car's on. That's the infrastructure, the laws, the housing market, the school systems, and that road. It is currently under heavy construction. It's full of potholes, and frankly, it's struggling to keep up.
That's a really vivid image. And looking at the Pulse of Ireland report this week, it is entirely accurate. We're seeing this fascinating friction.
Right.
Usually you'd expect culture and policy to sort of move in tandem. But right now, the creative sector is just sprinting into the future, while the structural side of the country, the legal frameworks, the housing stock, is in the middle of this really messy, difficult retrofit.
And we are going to get into all of it. We have a stack of sources here that covers everything from the coolest, grittiest underground post-punk releases to a massive Supreme Court ruling that fundamentally changes how religion is taught in schools.
And don't forget the billion-euro housing fund that somehow still ends up with empty houses.
Exactly. It's a lot of contradictions. So our mission today is to connect these dots. We want to see how this explosion of loud culture, and we will definitely explain why it's so loud, sits alongside these quieter, slower, but massive shifts in how society is organized.
And we have to talk about that TV pitch, the one that sounds like a joke but is actually happening.
Oh, the Downton Abbey meets Succession thing? I'm still not sure I buy that one, but yeah, we will get there. Let's start with the noise, the good kind.
The music.
The music. We have the shortlist for the RTÉ Choice Music Prize 2025 Album of the Year. For anyone outside the industry, this is basically the Mercury Prize or the Grammys of Ireland, right?
It's the gold standard. It's the barometer for the entire industry. And looking at the nominees, Siamat, Sprints, Just Mustard, Junior Brother, what strikes me immediately is just the texture of this list. Right. It is not playing it safe at all.
I recognize the names, but I haven't done a deep listen on all of them. I see Just Mustard on there. I know they have a certain reputation, but for the listener who hasn't dusted off a vinyl record since 1995. Break down that vibe. What are we actually hearing?
So Just Mustard is a great example of where the scene is. They lean really heavily into a genre called shoegaze or noise rock.
Shoegaze. Every time I hear that, I just picture people staring at their sneakers.
That is literally the origin of the term. It comes from guitarists staring down at their effects pedals to manipulate the sound, but sonically. Think of a wall of sound.
Okay.
Distorted guitars, feedback, vocals that are kind of buried deep in the mix rather than sitting on top. It creates this dreamy, slightly chaotic, almost industrial atmosphere. It's music you feel vibrating in your chest as much as you hear.
So it's intense.
It is very intense. And it's significant because having a band like that on the short list, alongside a band like Sprints, who are very aggressive driving punk, tells us something about the national mood. I mean, this isn't polite acoustic strumming. There is a lot of anxiety and energy being released here.
But then you have CM on the exact same list.
Right. And she's the polar opposite sonically. She is this global pop country phenomenon, big choruses, very melodic. But, and here's the thread, her lyrics have that same sharp, specifically Irish wit. It's tragicomedy. So whether it's the noise of Just Mustard or the pop of Siamat, the common denominator is this very distinct, confident identity.
The report also mentions we're in the middle of announcement season. We've got Artist of the Year coming on January 20th and Breakthrough Artist on the 21st. Why do you flag those specific dates? Is that just the industry calendar stuff?
It's more than that. The Album of the Year honors a body of work that's already done. It's looking backward. Breakthrough Artist, that's the leading indicator.
Oh.
It tells you where the money and the attention are going next. If you want to know what Ireland sounds like in 2027, you look at the Breakthrough winner on January 21st.
And clearly, that sound is migrating out of the studio. The report mentions the festival circuit, specifically a sliver of light, in Doolin and Ireland in Kilkenny.
Yes, and Doolin is a small place on the West Coast. Kilkenny is a medieval city. The fact that these high-concept, diverse festivals are thriving outside of Dublin shows you the health of the ecosystem. It's not centralized. The noise we're talking about is happening everywhere.
Which brings us to the fresh cuts. The report highlighted 4 specific new releases this week, and I want to dig into these because I think they really illustrate that sort of fragmented sound you mentioned. It's like spinning a radio dial and hitting a different universe every 2 seconds.
It really is. The variety is just staggering.
Let's start with Ria Rua. The track is Ass Movin' from the album Scape Egg. The report calls it energetic, which feels like a mild way to put it.
Energetic is definitely the polite term. This is alt-rock that demands your attention. It's got that driving rhythm, a bit of grit. It fits right into that loud culture thesis we started with. It's music for moving, not for sitting still.
Okay, but then we pivot to something completely different, courtesy. The track is My Friends, featuring Emily Beattie.
From the album Get a Life. Now, this is interesting because the Irish hip-hop scene has been bubbling for a decade, but this track is described as catchy and pop-leaning.
Meaning it's trying to cross over?
Exactly. It's melodic, it's accessible. It shows the genre is maturing to a point where it's not just, underground experimentalism anymore. It's making a play for the mainstream charts. It's a real sign of confidence.
And then, just to give us whiplash, we go right back to the heavy stuff. We have a band called Chalk.
Chalk is a name to watch, for sure.
The track is IDC, from their debut Crystal Punk. Even the name Crystal Punk gives you a vibe.
It creates a very specific image, doesn't it? Sharp, shiny, but aggressive. This tracks right back to that post-punk lineage we saw with Sprints. There is a real hunger for that gritty industrial sound right now. It's music that sounds like a city at night, a bit dangerous, a bit mechanical.
And finally, we have Rita Perry with Seasons.
From the EP Kill Your Darlings, and here we have a debut described as soulful. So in the span of just 4 tracks, we've gone from alt-rock to pop rap to industrial post-punk to soul.
It's eclectic, to say the least.
It is, but notice what isn't there. There's no generic radio filler. Everyone is kicking a lane and just driving hard in it.
The report also mentions that the music press, specifically Naller 9, is already placing bets on 2026. They're flagging acts like Dove Ellis and Hot Girl.
Hot Girl is a fantastic band name.
It's bold. But what does it say that we are already scouting 2026? We are barely into the current year.
It just shows the speed of the conveyor belt.
Mm-hmm.
The industry isn't resting on the success of the current stars. There's a constant churn of new talent. And that is the sign of a healthy culture. It's anticipatory, not nostalgic.
You're listening to My Irish Music and Culture News, brought to you by My Irish Radio, streaming the best in Irish and Celtic music all day, every day. From classic jigs and reels to the latest Irish rock and pub favorites, we celebrate the sound of Ireland worldwide. Want to be more than a listener? Be a host. Share your love for the Irish music by hosting your own show on My Irish Radio. It's easy to get started. Just send us an email, myirishradio@gmail.com. Don't forget, you can listen 24/7 at myirishradio.com. Make My Irish Radio your Irish radio.
Let's switch to the visual side. TV and theater. There's a pitch mentioned in the report for a new BDC series called House of Guinness. The description is Downton Abbey meets Succession.
It catches the ear, doesn't it?
It catches the ear, but I have to be the cynic here. That sounds like a marketing team just threw 2 popular SEO terms into a blender. People like rich people fighting and people like period costumes. Go. Does that actually work as a narrative, or is it just buzzwords?
I was skeptical too initially. It sounds derivative, but when you actually look at the history of the Guinness family, specifically that 19th century period following Arthur Guinness, it is legitimately that dramatic. You have the massive wealth, the brewing dynasty, but also incredible tragedy, infighting over the company's direction, and the intersection with Irish politics.
So the Succession comparison, the family backstabbing, is real.
It's historically accurate drama, yes. And framing it that way kind of recontextualizes a national icon. We usually think of Guinness as a stout or a tourist attraction. This turns it back into a human story of power. So while the pitch is buzzword heavy, the substance is actually there.
Okay, I'm listening. But here's a casting choice that I need you to explain to me. Misha Barton.
Marissa Cooper from the OC.
Yes. She's starring in Double Indemnity at the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin. Now, for the listener who isn't Dublin local, explain the Gaiety. Because to me, Misha Barton implies early 2000s California teen drama, not Dublin theater.
That is the clash. The Gaiety is an institution. It's historic. It's all velvet seats. It's a pantomime at Christmas. It's very traditional. It is the grand old dame of Dublin theaters.
So putting a Hollywood teen idol on that stage is a choice.
It's a deliberate collision of aesthetics. Double Indemnity is a classic noir, very dark, very stylized. Bringing in a name like Misha Barton injects our shot of Hollywood glamour, sure, but it also signals that the Gaiety is trying to pull in a different demographic. They aren't just playing to the traditional theater crowd. They want the generation that grew up watching the OC to buy tickets.
It's clever. It bridges that gap.
It does. But I also want to point out that while we have the flashy Hollywood names and the big BBC productions, the report also highlights the RTÉ Short Story Competition,
which feels much more grounded.
It is the foundation. I mean, Ireland has this massive literary reputation, Joyce, Beckett, Rooney, but things like the short story competition ensure that it's not just a museum of dead writers, it's investing in the pipeline. It's the literary equivalent of that Breakthrough Artist Award we were talking about. You need the glamour of Misha Barton to sell tickets, but you need the short story competition to keep the soul of the storytelling alive.
Okay, so we've established that the culture is vibrant, it's loud, it's experimenting. Now we need to look at the road underneath it, the structures. And this is where the Pulse report gets really serious. We need to talk about this UK Supreme Court ruling regarding Northern Ireland.
Yes, this is the heavyweight story of the week, no question.
The headline is that public schools in Northern Ireland must now teach about faiths beyond Christianity. On the surface, that sounds like a standard diversity and inclusion update. But you're telling me this is much deeper.
It is significantly deeper. This isn't just a memo saying be nicer. This challenges the legal bedrock of education in Northern Ireland, specifically the 1986 Education Order.
What was the 1986 order?
That legislation effectively mandated that religious education and collective worship in controlled schools had to be Christian-centric. It was written right into the law.
So the schools weren't just choosing to focus on Christianity. They were legally obliged to.
Correct. And the Supreme Court has now ruled that this exclusivity is incompatible with modern human rights laws, specifically the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion.
There's a massive shift. They aren't just changing their curriculum. They're saying the old law violated human rights.
Exactly. It shifts the entire baseline. I mean, schools can't just opt out of teaching Islam or Judaism or humanism because it's not in the tradition. It forces a curriculum rewrite that reflects the actual demographics of 2026, not 1986.
But practically, how hard is that to implement? You're talking about undoing decades of structure.
Oh, it's going to be incredibly difficult. You have to retrain teachers, rewrite textbooks, and navigate all the sensitivities of parents. But the ruling is a recognition that the society has changed. Northern Ireland is no longer a monoculture, if it ever truly was. The law is finally catching up to the reality of the population.
It's dismantling a silo.
It is. It's a move away from this is who we are to this is who we are becoming, and that transition is always painful.
Speaking of identity and where we belong, there's a story in the report that really moved me. It's about a new dementia center opening in Birmingham, England.
Yes, this was a very touching inclusion in the source material.
It's a center specifically focused on Irish culture, designed for the diaspora. Why is a medical facility focusing so much on culture?
I think this is profound. When we talk about dementia care, we talk about memory. And for the Irish diaspora, people who emigrated to the UK in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, their core memories, their identity, is wrapped up in Irish music, Irish turns of phrase, Irish social history.
So if you treat the medical condition but ignore the cultural context, you're missing the actual person.
Precisely. If you're losing your short-term memory, often the things that remain are the songs from your childhood or the slang you used growing up. Providing care that recognizes that Irishness is a form of deep respect. It acknowledges that being Irish doesn't stop when you cross the Irish Sea. It lives in Birmingham, in London, in Boston.
It's emotional infrastructure, really.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
But now let's bring it back to the physical infrastructure, the bricks and mortar. We have to talk about housing.
The perennial crisis.
The report mentions a €1 billion housing fund plan. Now, if I'm listening to this, I hear €1 billion and I think, great, problem solved. I mean, that is a staggering amount of money.
It is a war chest. It shows the government is willing to throw massive resources at the problem. But, and here's the friction that drives people crazy, The report also cites news regarding vacant new social housing units.
That's the disconnect I just don't understand. How can you have €1 billion in funding and simultaneous reports of empty new homes?
This highlights that the crisis isn't just about money anymore. It's about logistics, it's about bureaucracy and allocation. You can build the units or buy them, but if the system for assigning them to families is sluggish, or if there are disputes over maintenance contracts, or if the infrastructure around the houses isn't finished, they just sit empty.
So the money's moving fast, but the keys are moving slow.
Exactly. And that creates a very dangerous cynicism. When people see a headline about €1 billion fund and then walk past a boarded up or empty new build, they lose faith in the system's ability to deliver. It reinforces that idea of the potholed road we talked about at the start. The ambition is there, the money is there, but the execution is stumbling.
It really emphasizes that pulse contradiction. You have artists producing world-class work, courts making landmark human rights rulings, and yet we can't seem to figure out how to put a key in a door efficiently.
It's the growing pains of a modernizing state.
Well, to give us all a break from the frustrations of the housing market, nature decided to intervene this week.
The Northern Lights.
The photos were everywhere. A powerful solar storm made the aurora borealis visible all across Ireland.
There is something very grounding about that, isn't there? We spend so much time analyzing human systems, politics, economics, who won the Choice Music Prize, and then a solar storm happens and the entire sky turns green and purple.
It puts the €1 billion fund into perspective.
It does. It dominates the cultural conversation in a way that nothing else can. It cuts through the noise. Whether you are a Supreme Court justice wrestling with the 1986 education order or a kid listening to that new Chalk album, you are looking up at the same sky.
It's a shared awe, a reminder that we are just living on a rock floating in space.
A rock with a very complicated housing market.
True. So let's try to pull this all together. We've covered a lot of ground from shoegaze to Supreme Courts. What's the takeaway here?
If I had to synthesize it, I would say Ireland is currently defined by a clash of high-velocity culture and heavy, slow-moving structural change.
How so?
Well, look at the arts. You have high-energy post-punk, fast pop, these Succession-style dramas. It's loud, it's confident, it's aggressive, it knows exactly what it is.
And the structures.
The structures, education, housing, they're trying to catch up. They are being forced to modernize by law and by necessity. The schools are being forced to broaden their worldview. The housing market is trying to absorb massive funding while fixing logistical failures.
So the culture is leading, and the institutions are following.
Yes, it's a place that is rapidly shedding old skins, whether that's a monocultural education system or a traditional folk sound, and trying to figure out what the new version looks like.
And for you listening, why does this matter? Because it paints a picture of a place that is alive. It's not a museum piece. Ireland isn't just quiet rolling hills and old pubs. It's electric guitars, high court human rights battles, vacant houses, and solar storms.
It is a dynamic, evolving organism.
And that is what makes it so fascinating to watch.
Before we go, I want to leave the listener with one thought. We talked about that Supreme Court ruling, the one forcing schools to teach faiths beyond Christianity, and we talked about the €1 billion for housing. It makes me wonder, as we move through 2026, the question isn't, is Ireland rich or is Ireland creative? We know the answers to that. The question is, can Ireland actually build the future it keeps writing songs about? Because right now, the art is imagining a future inclusive, bold, energetic, that the infrastructure can't quite support yet. The challenge for the next year is seeing if the roads can finally catch up to the car.
That is a big question to chew on. Thanks for diving in with us.
A pleasure.
That's it for this episode of My Irish Radio, Music and Culture News. Thanks for joining us. And remember, you can hear the best in Irish and Celtic music 24 hours a day at myirishradio.com. If you ever dreamed of sharing your favorite tunes and stories, now's your chance. Become one of the hosts. Host your own show right here on My Irish Radio. Just send us an email. It's easy as that. myirishradio@gmail.com. Until next time, it's Jamie Flanagan. Keep the music playing and keep Ireland in your heart.